In a place outside time lies a mystical realm of sound and vision. A wondrous civilization. Where good and evil struggle to possess the dark crystal.
Here in the Castle of the Crystal, the Skeksis took control. Today, once more, they gather at the crystal as the first sun climbs to its peak. For this is the way of the Skeksis. As they ravage the land, so too they learn to draw new life from the sun. Today, once more, they will replenish themselves, cheat death again, through the power of their source, their treasure, their fate, the dark crystal. But today, the ceremony of the sun gives no comfort. Today, an emperor lies dying. Today, a new emperor must seize the throne.
I think the Dark Crystal may be about the destruction of Israel, that state that was founded in the desert in 1948. The Dark Crystal, I think, came out in the theaters in 1982. It's a Jim Henson movie, and everything's puppets. Now, hear me out. I've done multiple reviews of the Dark Crystal, and I keep refining my reviews. Here's the latest addendum to a video I thought that I would do it once and we'd have some laughs and then I'd move on. So the Dark Crystal is about the planet Thra, and the planet Thra has a genocide where all the Gelflings are exterminated. The Skeksis are exiled beings that come down to the planet Thra. They're fallen angels. They give forbidden knowledge to man, who are the Gelflings and the Podlings and the people of the planet Thra. There's a golden age where they use the forbidden knowledge to rule over the earth, and then things start to get dark because of this forbidden knowledge. So the Skeksis split. They were one Gnostic being of without gender or whatever, and then they split into duality and good and evil. And then there's the evil Skeksis.
Wait, please? Please, wait! Please make peace!
Skeksis are evil, hand-writhing, hook-nosed elites. And they're like, yes, we're the Skeksis. And that's how they talk. And like, oy vey. And that's literally what the Skeksis are.
I hate your whimper. Quiet!
And they're evil. And they live in a crystal castle in the desert, again in that state that was founded in the desert in 1948. And from there, they do their evil occult practices. They do their Kabbalah.
The Skeksis gather in the sacred chamber, where the crystal hangs above a shaft of air and fire. The Skeksis with their hard and twisted bodies, their harsh and twisted wills. For 1,000 years they have ruled, yet now there are only 10. A dying race, ruled by a dying emperor, imprisoned within themselves in a dying land.
And they literally drain the vital essence of all the living creatures on the planet.
Look into the reflector, podling. Feel the power of the dark crystal. Yes. And now the beam will rid you of your fears, your thoughts, your vital essence. You're very lucky, slave. Only the Emperor can drink your essence. He's here. Close it, slave.
And they have spies. They have crystal bats, which are cameras that are everywhere, all over the planet, to spy on them from their base where they live in the desert.
What was that?
A crystal bat. What they see, the Skeksis see too.
Did it see us?
No, I don't think so.
This is going to be a weird place I'm going to go now, but I'll go there. I saw a video of Hila and Ethan Klein visiting Israel, and I think sort of because of Ethan Klein's autism, he saw Israel and he's like, wow, this place is kind of a dump.
I'm just thinking about how much I hate Israel and can't wait to leave. It's like if the country is so holy, why does everybody leave dog shit and garbage everywhere on the fucking ground? If this place is so fucking holy, why does everybody literally take a shit in the fucking street and I have to walk through it? I get the feeling sometimes it's cleaner in goddamn shit butt fuck cancer India than it is in this holy country.
And it is, because they're just doing like their home videos to put on, H3H3 channel. And they're showing their trip to Israel, or it's on their vlog or whatever. And it is kind of a dump. And I'm like, yes, like a movie set, like a studio lot set, or like when they build a set for a movie, and then, it doesn't need to be, just the facade of the thing needs to be believable enough, but at some point it's just going to be destroyed. And, also granted, it's out in the middle of the desert, so they have to get resources there and everything. But I was like, yes, I do believe that Israel is going to be sacrificed up, and then that has to do with the aliens are coming and all this stuff. And the Dark Crystal kind of does have these themes in it, because the Skeks are aliens. All right, they're also light bringers. They bring light to the planet Thra, which again is, did I say already that the planet Thra is just an anagram for Earth? It's just switching up the letters of the word Earth. So on the planet Thra, there's a great genocide where all the Gelflings are wiped off the planet. So you can tell me who the Gelflings represent, but I can tell you about the Uru and the Skeksis. They both have really big noses, and like the Urus, they're like the gentle Jews, and then the Skeksis are like the evil Jews. Can I just say it like that? And the Skeksis rule the planet, and they literally do rituals to drain, and science stuff, to drain the vital essence of all the other living creatures on the planet.
No! What are you doing to it?
Just a little experiment. Such an honor for you. No Gelfling has laid eyes upon the crystal in 1,000 trines. Look deep into it.
I feel it's pumping.
Don't mirror. Don't fight. Give the crystal your fear, your love, your secrets.
Please, my lord, help me.
Give the crystal everything. Give it your very What have you done? No, wait. Behold. Here is the answer we seek. Here is life everlasting.
Explain yourself, scientist.
I have drained the Gelfing's essence. This is the solution to our problem.
What?
A new source of life. Here, my emperor, for you. Drink. You must drink. How do you feel, sire?
I feel.
It's also, I think, where headquarters is for the hub, where they make all the AI models, is in the Crystal Castle in the desert, in that state that was founded in 1948. I'm going back between Jim Henson fantasy and the world that you and I live in. The Gelflings have to heal the crystal, and it's so dumb I didn't think of this before, but if you look at the Kabbalistic tree of life, and again, I'm talking about Kabbalah, look at the Kabbalistic tree of life. The dark crystal of the movie is the Kabbalistic tree of life. And what is a crystal? Think of the Palantirs from Lord of the Rings. Think of crystal balls for a fortune teller. A crystal is a home or an eye for a demon. Demons go into crystal balls, and then they like it. They have an eyeball, and they can get inside there because they're incorporeal. These are things that God, these are unclean spirits that can't go to heaven or to hell, so they're doomed to haunt the earth, and they try to possess us and stuff. So in the dark crystal, this Gnostic gospel story, or whatever you want to call it, or Kabbalist, very Kabbalistic ideas, and duality stuff and like Buddhism things. This is all the stuff that Jim Henson and Brian Froud were probably into in the 70s, because you had the wave of, you know, gurus come onto American shores with the 1960s counterculture revolution. Then everybody by the end of the 70s is coming down on the drugs that everybody took in the 60s. And there's all this new age stuff that's put out there. And there's a resurgence of Annie Besant and Helena Blavatsky and like Ledbetter and Aleister Crowley. I think there's in the Dark Crystal movie there's a as above so below thing that's like a repeated line in the Dark Crystal, the one from '82. I think that's repeated. Agra is talking about that. We'll get some more into Agra as well. So Agra is some kind of representation of an Earth Mother goddess character, and she's also kind of like an Odin character because she has like 3 eyes. And I've heard some of the lore of the Dark Crystal that Agra, remember she'd take her eyeballs out? Isn't that like Odin? So, Odin was looking for secrets and stuff like that, and then he kicked Thor out of Asgard. So you think about fallen angels down here, the story of Prometheus and the Lightbringers, and if you look at the Skeksis, which I'm hoping I've included a clip at this point when you're seeing this. Look at the trailer, or whatever I have. I'm going to have clips from the movie. The Skeksis are these beings of light, and then they split into the foul, disgusting, Kabbalistic Skeksis and the mystic Urus, and they both have big noses, and, you know, the Urus are good. And the Skeksis are bad, and you know, God has to settle the earth, and we need the healing of the crystal. There's a lot of bad messages in this movie. This is you know, I would say Jim Henson and Brian Froud trying to make sense of the world, so they had a lot of this new age philosophy and like old occultism and paganism and Kabbalistic stuff as the source material, and probably channeled stuff into the movie that we get as a Dark Crystal, and then whatever's in those 8 to 10 episodes of Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. Let me look at some of my notes. Think of the Palantirs. They corrupted the Palantirs are crystal balls, and they corrupted the wizards. That's what happened to Saruman. He was turned evil by the Palantirs. Look at Palantir Peter Thiel. It's about surveillance state.
Are Gelfing alive?
The prophecy. The prophecy says Gelfling will destroy us.
No.
What again is a crystal? It's an eye for a demon, whether it's a crystal ball or New Age crystals. Like these are home, like if you're doing deliverance ministry stuff, if you're not aware of this stuff, you want to get rid of crystals and don't have a crystal ball. And this is like an eyeball for a demon, like a crystal ball to have 360-degree in the round visions. Demons like to get into crystals and stuff. So we have the Dark Crystal, and it needs to be healed. But basically, what is it? It's a home for a demon, and the Skeksis worship and venerate this crystal shard. And they're exiled, and then they split, and then the crystal must be healed. But, you know, really, like, where you tell me where in the Bible it says anything about Jesus, Father God, Holy Spirit, and Jesus that has anything to do with crystals. This is the realms of the demonic, and again, you know, Palantirs, New Age crystals, New Age healing with crystals. Look in the research of Marcel Vogel that you can store information inside of crystals.
This is Marcel Vogel speaking. I'm going to talk to you now on how to tune the crystal, charge it, clear it, and prepare oneself for the basic operations that are used in the therapeutic practices that we use with these crystals.
I would say, evil information. Probably it's a home for a demon. And then here's the Urskiks who are worshiping and venerating a housing for a demon. What else do we have in notes? Kabbalah, the planet Thra has 3 suns. This is a Kabbalistic term, and a theosophical term, Annie Besant, I think, was just like reinterpreting stuff from Kabbalah, which is witchcraft. What's Kabbalah? He keeps talking about Kabbalah. This is witchcraft. This is Jewish witchcraft. And maybe in some way Agra is like a form of like a Lilith or something, or like, again, with the eyeball that comes out, or Stygian witches from Greek mythology, where they all share an eyeball. Agra has 3 eyeballs. There's only one Agra, but there's 3 Stygian witches from Greek mythology. But also maybe it's some kind of inversion or perversion of Father, Son, Holy Spirit. But since this is like a Gnostic type of story, we have Earth Mother Goddess Agra. I heard that saw from the comic books that Agra had a son, and I'm like, oh, the only begotten son of Agra, or whatever. And it's a female character. It's an inversion. Like there's a resurrection of Agra. I saw that in the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. They resurrect Agra. I guess she died and come back. And then also in the end of the Dark Crystal movie, the girl Gelfling is killed and then resurrected, not by God, but by the Urskeks when they have their Gnostic union and they're put back together, and there's a balance of good and evil, which isn't a thing. It's not about a balance of good or evil. I'm telling you, pick a side, good or evil. And there you go. It's just like, a basic story, I would say, of retelling of fallen angels, like so many things, so many superhero movies. The Superman falls to Earth, Thor gets kicked out of Viking heaven, that's Asgard, and Batman's a Dark Knight, and just any story where somebody falls to Earth and they have powers and abilities far beyond that of a mortal man. So we know that the Urskeks are like space travelers, which is just aliens, which is fallen angels, and they're beings of light bringers that come down to Earth, to Thra rather, and give forbidden knowledge to the Gelflings and the Pod people, and then the world becomes corrupted. And the Skeksis, not unlike when God flooded the earth, the Skeksis, like the Nephilim, just were consuming everything on the planet. And it's a known thing that the Nephilim were cannibals, and they started eating man, which, Nephilim are part fallen angel, part human women. And then the Nephilim went around like screwing other animals, so you have animal, human, angel hybrid creatures. And it is, in the Gospels, God tells the apostles, go and preach the word. Forget about the law. You guys can't handle it. Now I want you to talk to the Jew and the Gentile alike and spread the word of God to every living creature. So what does that mean? There's nothing. It means there was creatures here, even in the days of Jesus. That's my belief. Because if it says preach the gospel to every living creature, what, birds? Hey, I'm telling the dogs, come here. And then there's also this interesting example of the woman wants her daughter to be healed, and then Jesus says a strange thing. He says, my teaching is not for the little dogs, but for my people of my Israel, or whatever. And then the woman says, but surely even the little dogs wait for scraps at their master's table. And Jesus is impressed by this, and he says, your daughter is healed. And wow. And then Jesus tells everybody, go spread the gospel, tells his apostles, go spread the gospel to every living creature. And there's no stories about, and this is the story of St. Paul talking to the water buffalo. That didn't happen. There's creatures here because the fallen angels didn't get to leave. We know that Nephilim giants survived the floods, or there was more of them made, because when they get to the promised land, he's like, okay, now go and scout over there. So they send scouts out, and then they're like, there's giants over there. We're like grasshoppers on their back. And God says, yeah, go over there and kill them. And they're like, what are you talking about? They'll destroy us. They're giants. And he's like, are you with me or not? Do you believe that if I tell you that you'll go kill them and you'll get them, you'll go get them? And then they go in and kill the giants. And then Prophet King David is told to kill the Amalekites, which are the blood lickers. And that's in the name. That's what the name Amalekite means. So, so we have the splitting of the Urus and the Skeksis, and the Skeksis become like the Nephilim, and they consume the life, literally consume the life essence like the Nephilim did, where they drank blood and they ate people, and they genocide the Gelflings. Like, and then things have to be set right when the crystal is healed, when the demon, the shard fragments of the shattered souls of demons or whatever it is becomes, you put back together again in the Kabbalistic tree of life, blah blah blah. And I haven't seen anybody talking about the dark crystal like this, and I think that they're, you know, like it's about fallen angels, the story of Prometheus, the light bringers. I mean, literally at the end of the movie, when the Skeksis and the Urus are combined, they become these beings of light. And then it's supposed to be the ushering in of a new golden age. Maybe that has something to do with Crowley stuff, you know, talking about the coming race and Homo Superior and the age of Horus, and maybe in some, I would say, ignorant way, that's what's had. There's a fruit fly flying around. I don't have any fruit. There is some kind of, you know, whatever Froud and Jim Henson were into by the, you know, when they're writing the Dark Crystal, that's, you know, brings to the end of the healing of the planet, and it's bringing in a golden age and all kinds of stuff that David Bowie was singing about in the 70s. We're the start of the coming race. Remember that from Hunky Dory? Probably not. David Bowie was all into Aleister Crowley stuff, and he has a whole album called Hunky Dory, where he's just talking about being immersed in Crowley's uniform, and oh, you pretty things. He's talking about transgenderism and this Gnostic union of opposites, where you can be whatever you want. You can be a man and a woman. You can be a Baphometic hermaphrodite, and he's got a whole album about that. And you know, I don't know what kind of music Jim Henson and Brian Froud were into in the 70s, but, you know, there was that move towards androgyny in the 70s in popular culture, and especially in music, and all those guys were reading Crowley. Led Zeppelin was reading Crowley. David Bowie was dressed up in Crowley's uniforms. He even had David Bowie even had like a World War II German phase. Why am I bringing David Bowie into this? Because he was in Labyrinth, and he played the Goblin King. I know that Jim Henson said he wanted Sting, but I think it's more appropriate, considering Bowie's background, that he would play the Goblin King, since he was a magician. He was a Crowleyan magician, like magic with a K. And I mean, literally, he sung odes to Crowley. And then by the time you get to Station with Bowie, he's singing about the Kabbalistic tree of life, and he says you can't get from Malkuth to Kether. I forget what it is. I think you can't get from Malkuth to Kether, which is like trying to get to like skip God, like to go to like get from earth to heaven and just kind of skip God or whatever. Maybe it's Kether to Malkuth. I can't remember, but I know that Malkuth is at the bottom of the tree of life, and that's the shape of the dark crystal. So maybe I'll have an image in it. But if you want to look at the dark crystal, there's clips of it in this video, and you want to compare that to the tree of life, if I don't put that in there. Yeah, I mean, the dark crystal is just like the tree of life. And there's also symbolism where the Urus doing a sand, like a Buddhist sand painting thing, because the Urus are definitely more like what we think of as Buddhists, even though the Buddhists are a bunch of weirdos and perverts, and they used to put heads on pikes and shit, and they're not peaceful at all. But the Urus doing a Buddhist sand painting type of thing with the boy Gelfling. And it's just a representation of the tree of life.
Their ways were the gentle ways of natural wizards. Yet now there are only 10. A dying race, numbly rehearsing the ancient ways in a blur of forgetfulness. But today...
And if you looked at the drawings that Brian Froud did for this, what the symbolism in the Dark Crystal means, you could just easily transpose the Tree of Life over that sand painting, and I'll try and include a clip. This is a lot of work for me, this one, trying to put all the clips in. But, you know, hey, maybe it's worth it for 24 people to watch and then somebody else to steal all my work and get thousands of views and never credit me, because YouTubers can kind of be assholes. I should know I am one, right? So there you go. Some more. Back to the rest of the video. I have this packed with all kinds of symbolism and meaning, and you know, I'll try and make another video to refine it all. But for now, you're getting to see all my work. Oh, themes of resurrection was the other note that I wanted to put in there. So if you've seen The Dark Crystal, that spoiler alert for a movie from 1982 that's about hands. So the girl Gelfling gets sacrificed. They stab her in the back and she dies. And then the boy Gelfling holds her and she's resurrected. Now it's like this, I would call this some kind of Luciferian inversion, or some kind of inversion where, you know, Jesus died, he laid down his life for us, and then he was resurrected. It's a divine patriarchy we live in, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But this is some kind of weird, you know, keep in mind this was like basically formulated in the late 1970s, and then a lot of New Age stuff back then. And then it's on the screen in theaters by 1982. So it took like 3 or 4 years and $25 million to make this movie. This is really a big risk for Henson, big financial risk. So instead of, you know, Jesus rising from death, firstborn of the dead, in the planet Thra, there's an inversion where the girl character lays down her life and she's raised from the dead, which would be like sort of like a, instead of Jesus as the resurrection, you have like some, and again, if these are Eastern European types or Russian types or whatever, then you have an Anastasia resurrection type of thing, and Anastasia means the resurrection. So you have like a female, what's the word I want, like Sophia resurrection or whatever, you know what I mean? It's just like inversion, like, oh, Jesus was raised from the dead. Okay, well, we're going to do Dark Crystal. We're going to have the girl get raised from the dead.
Hold her to you. She is part of you, as we all are part of each other. Now we leave you the crystal of truth. Make your world in its light.
Which is, you know, ushering in this goddess worship and all this stuff, which only continued, you know, like into the 1980s with Louise Hay and Doreen Virtue and all this stuff. And then here we are today with the girls don't know what they're doing and doing witch talks and everything. And they're getting, you know, Evil Richard Dad inspired fairies by Brian Froud tattooed on their bodies, and they're like, I have goth fairies. And, you know, Brian Froud is into all, like, if you look at his artwork, that's what he does. He's drawing spirits and all this stuff. And you know, like Labyrinth is about Jennifer Connelly. I know it's like about her going to Eyes Wide Shut party, but it's also about making a wish to demons and offering up your baby brother as a child human sacrifice so that you can don't have to babysit anymore, I guess. But I mean, again, like, look at the themes that I'm talking about in the Dark Crystal. And I'm going to talk about Labyrinth at some place in this review. I talk about Labyrinth. But that is the story of Labyrinth as well. It's not just Eyes Wide Shut party, mask ball for Jennifer Connelly and David Bowie. It's also the plot of the movie is that she offers up her brother as a child human sacrifice, and then she recants on that. She's like, I got to get my brother back before they change him into a goblin, before he's sacrificed. And and she wins. She gets him back.
I wish.
Listen. You're going to say it.
Say what?
You shut up. Listen, she's going to say the word.
I can bear it no longer. Goblin King, wherever you may be, take this child of mine far away from me.
Oh, that's not it. Excellent. That rubbish. It doesn't even start with I wish.
Oh, Toby, stop it! Oh, I wish I did know what to say to make the goblins take you away.
I wish the goblins would come and take you away right now. That's not hard, is it?
I wish.
Did you say it?
Shut up!
I wish the goblins would come and take you away. Right now. Toby? Toby? Are you all right? Why aren't you crying?
And she'll never be the same again. So anyway, back to the rest of the review. There's just extra stuff that I thought there was value in adding this in there. So also themes of resurrection, but in some kind of like, I don't know, it's probably somehow Gnostic because it's a woman being raised from the dead instead of Jesus or whatever. I have another little thing to add in terms of resurrection themes. In the original Dark Crystal movie, the girl Gelfling is resurrected at the end, and she is killed, like she's sacrificed, but then she's raised. It's significant because Jesus is first born of the dead, and he's the Son of God. So if you're going to do inversion of stuff, whether it's ignorant or willful, I saw a clip from Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, and it says the resurrection of Agra. So I watched the clip. And then Agra, who's this little, it's like a witch. And she looks like Danny DeVito and Real Perlman, like fused Gnostically into one being. Like, gender, whatever, non-binary being or whatever. I'm being silly. But anyway, Agra is resurrected in the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance. So apparently she was dead, and then she's like, would be the firstborn of the dead then. And it's a woman, a female character. And I just thought that I'd put that in there in terms of like this, the Dark Crystal is a weird Gnostic movie.
Mother Olga, are you all right? No, I just came back from the dead.
So anyway, Agra, an inverted firstborn of the dead, and it's a woman. How about that? Instead of Jesus, Son of God. So there you go. the Skeksis created the Gartham soldiers, and the Skeksis represent, I'm going to say, Jews, right? The evil ones.
Now, by the law, he must pay.
But the Garthams are golems. And does it mean anything that the Garthams are like crab monsters and stuff? No, it's probably just Brian Froud had a fever dream about bad seafood or something, and he's like, oh, I'm never again, and then he's invented the Garthams. But the Garthams are like the foot soldiers that are created by the Skeksis, and I just want to say that Gartham equals golem. That would be my theory on that.
A Gelfing alive?
A Gelfling! The prophecy! The prophecy says Gelfling will destroy us!
No! Count him! Attack! Gelfing soldiers! Find the Gelfling!
I can't help but think that if I watched a movie again or saw this Age of Resistance Netflix thing, that probably there would be so much more, you know, packed into it. Because basically the whole thing is created by Brian Froud. In terms of the mythology of the world, Jim Henson just said, go ahead, make it up, and then Jim put in whatever he wanted or whatever. Jim Henson started out with a story about crocodiles, reptilians that were evil, because he thought they'd be cool puppets, and then it became the Dark Crystal, and he really did give Brian Froud, because of his creativity, creativity of Brian Froud, which is pretty big. He just let him run with it, and I guess you could say to some degree that when it comes to folklore and mythology, Brian Froud has had a whole adult life of learning about history of Europe and all the blights of fairies and elves and goblins and changelings and shapeshifters and all that stuff.
The artist Brian Froud has learned that fairies, like humans, are bound to nature. His work draws on this capacity for creation as well as destruction.
Traditionally, fairies blight things. They blight crops. They blight people. They cause problems. The fairies were blamed for the great potato famine in Ireland. Fairies were blamed for misshapen or sickly children. So man's always had this real interesting and difficult relationship with fairies. I think nowadays people have the modern impression that fairies are all sweetness and light and pretty, but they are often dark and difficult.
And he understands something about the symbolism. Like I remember the Dark Crystal book, you explaining the symbolism had these overlays so that you could see the pyramid symbolism and stars and everything. Another thing I'm just thinking of now is that Brian Froud said that every single one of his fantasy works that he does is he draws a star, and that's the composition of every single one of his conglomerations of elves and fairies things that he does. He always starts with a pentagram, whether it's right side up or upside down. Does that mean I think that he's worships the devil? No, but there's no doubt in my mind that Froud does channel a lot of his artwork. And, I have a whole video on how I channeled artwork. And I just wanted to put in that the Garthams equal golems, because if you look into the Jews made golems to fight for them, so the Skeksis, made golems to fight for them. And they also put cameras everywhere. That's the crystal bats. So anyway, back to the rest of the review. Also, the Skeksis and the Uru, or the Urskeks, they're all masculine.
Prophecy is fulfilled. We are again one.
They're like more like God's angels. It doesn't say that angels came down to earth and had sex with human men and women. It says that the angels came down to earth, were willing to take on a curse, and had sex with women. So the Uru and the Skeksis and the Dark Crystal, they're masculine. Again, like fallen angels. So I think it's pretty easy to say that the Urskeks are just representing fallen angels, and then they corrupt the whole planet. And then instead of God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit setting things right, it's done by some kind of Gnostic union of the balancing of good and evil, and then that'll bring the world back, and we'll come into the age of Horus or whatever. And it's lies, and it's bullshit, and it's very misguided. And again, I say this, I'm not trying to accuse Jim Henson or Brian Froud of being, or Frank Oz for that matter, for being evil or anything. I think a lot of things are channeled, but I just figured if I didn't put that point in there, is that the Urskeks are, you know, if you didn't figure it out yourself, they're fallen angels, and they're masculine, because there's no, who's the female figure, all right, is Agra, and she's the Earth Mother goddess, witch. She's a witch. I mean, look, come on, she's a witch. And then she has the eye, you know. And then when the conjunction lines up in the planet, like, I'm sure I'm going to have images of this included, where you get to see the great conjunction, and it's the lining up of the three suns, which is very Kabbalistic. And then Ani Besant talked about there being three suns, which she got was from looking into Kabbalah and trying to make up her own religion or whatever the hell that witch was doing. She looks like Agra. Look at Ani Besant, look at Agra. They look the same. You'd think that maybe had some influence on Brian Froud, whatever his reading materials were, that Agra looks, that little ugly witch Agra looks a lot like little ugly Ani Besant. Probably on purpose. So I'm got all these clips. I'm like, am I going to remember to put a picture of Ani Besant next to Agra? I hope so. And if not, you can just Google image search Ani Besant and go, oh yeah, that's Agra, all right. So there you go. So you have the witch, the Earth Mother goddess Agra, and her only begotten son. And then you have, because that's from the comic books, I know it's not in the movies, but in the comic books Agra has a son. I saw a clip in somebody's video, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting, because it's inversion. We have Father, Son, Holy Spirit. It's a divine patriarchy. So down here on earth you have Earth Mother goddess Agra and her only begotten son, and no spirit, and resurrection of female characters and not male characters in this movie, the movie and the TV series for Netflix or whatever. And then you have the Urskeks, which are fallen angels. And they're a bunch of yin-yangs. And only when they're joined together and there's a balance of good and evil. That's a bullshit idea. There's no balance of good and evil. I don't know how many times I have to put that in this video, but you pick a side. Evil, you're going to hell. Pick good, maybe you got a chance. It's only God's grace and His mercy by acknowledging that He is God. And the Dark Crystal doesn't say anything about Jesus or God or the Bible. It's supposed to be completely foreign, completely alien. And it's also a lot of bunkum, because they're saved by healing a crystal, which is very New Age shit, right? And the crystal is the tree of life. And you know the tree of life has become inverted because of the knowledge of good and evil and everything. So that's probably a big part of it that I haven't even really thought about. It's just kind of coming to me now. The idea of the inversion of the Kabbalistic tree of life. I mean, with Malkuth at the bottom, do I have the tree of life upside down? The tree of knowledge of good and evil, tree of life. Stick around for my outtakes, and I tell you about Kabbalistic tree of life in Neon Genesis Evangelion, an anime that talks about the the Battle of Gog Magog ending, and where the bad guys win and Lilith consumes all the Christian souls on earth, which is the bad ending. But in the Dark Crystal, we get the golden age, the new golden age, or the golden age of the new, the Golden Dawn? New Order of the Golden Dawn, or whatever. It's Crowley stuff, Thelema stuff, Theosophical stuff, Gnosticism stuff. and which probably has something to do with why a movie that wasn't a hit got remade into a mini-series for Netflix, because I'm sure it's all full of this Gnostic gospel kind of bullshit and lies, or B-A-A-L-S-H it, bullshit and lies. So, yeah, you know, I had to insert this somewhere into the review because I was looking for clips, and I discovered something about the movie that I never knew before, and that's that the Dark Crystal was originally finished in a foreign language that nobody could understand, because they hired a linguist to make up languages for the movie so that the movie would be watched as a completely foreign experience. There's another world you've never seen before. They speak another language, and you just watch the movie, and it doesn't matter that you don't know what they're saying. So they hired a linguist who gave the Skeksis some version of Egyptian to speak, and they gave the pod people are speaking in Serbian, Croatian, and if you watch the movie, the pod people still speak in gibberish, but there are some words in Polish and Russian, and if you speak Polish and Russian, then you know that the pod people were speaking some form of, you know, like, again, I think it was Serbian, Croatian with Polish and Russian, because they hired like a linguist to do it. I forget what the language of the Gelflings is, but it does give a different context for the movie, considering, you know, the ritualistic ways of the Skeksis, who I also found out were dressed like in Renaissance style clothing, and they genocide the Gelflings, and the pod people are the slaves. And think about this, like the word slave comes from Slavic, because the original slaves were the Slavs. That's what the word etymology of the word slave comes from. It means Slavics. So the pod people are the slaves of the Skeksis, and they speak in Croatian and Russian and Polish.
How do you say thank you?
Oh, value vam.
Hvala vam. Hvala vam.
A vo Hidra?
I druška uskara. Kira, jen veselite. Ora, veselite.
Hidra.
You know, version, like with J.R. Tolkien. Wasn't he a linguist? And then he came up with the language of Elvish, and it's like a functional language, like you can learn how to speak Elvish. And for people who are really into Star Trek, which I think is paid for by the Rand Corporation, say what you will about that, you can actually learn how to speak Klingon because it makes sense. Like, they actually created languages. Well, they did that for the Dark Crystal, and the executives lost their minds, and they were like, we have to change it. So Jim Henson is like watching the movie and the movements of the puppets' mouths, and he had to write a script so that we put in English, and which is probably, if you think about it, for the best, because you imagine seeing the Dark Crystal in 1982, and it's not even spoken in a language that anyone, you know, like they made up languages for the planet Thra, which is, again, an anagram for Earth. And I just had to put that in there because I thought it was an important thing that I was not aware of. And I don't know, maybe I'll be back with some more if I find out anything more. So anyway, back to the rest of the review. Oh, I do have one more thing. I said this in the video that you're going to see, like in the rest of the video, because I don't know where I'm going to put this that you're seeing now. But when the Skeksis drain the vital essence of the Gelflings and the Podlings, which are just the other people of the world, they're literally harvesting their energy. They're doing ritual sacrifices where they take the life essence of the person they're sacrificing and they use it to rejuvenate themselves. This is blood sacrifice. This is the same kind of stuff that the Mayans and the Incas and the Aztecs were doing. This is the same thing that worshippers of Baal were doing, where they were offering offering up their children to, you know, like it's in the Bible, it says don't offer up your children to the fire and stuff like that. They're literally, the Skeksis are literally sacrificing people up. And keep in mind that if I said, in this video I said that they're going to nuke Israel, and that a lot of people that used to live in Israel are going over to the Ukraine because the men aren't home because they're dying in war. And who's there? The women. So again, think of the language of the pod people, and forgive my ignorance for not remembering what language the Gelflings speak, but let's just say they spoke some kind of like Ukrainian, Russian, Eastern European, Serbian, Croatian dialect or whatever, and think about how the Skeksis are leaving the Crystal Castle in the desert and they're going over to the fertile soils of Ukraine, and to go after all these beautiful Gelfling women. So, you know what I mean? It's interesting symbolism there. And again, before I go, I don't think that Jim Henson or Brian Froud or Frank Oz were like evil occultists or anything like that. I think a lot of stuff that we do is channeled. And if you look into interviews with Brian Froud, which I have, I don't know that I need to include any of them in here, but I watched some interviews with Brian Froud, who was the production designer. He really helped craft the world, and everything has deeper meaning to it. And like, did you see the trailer? I tried to put the trailer up front, and it has like the pyramid. Like the Skeksis are doing their ritual chamber has a big pyramid with the eye in the middle of it, and the great conjunction of the movie, the Dark Crystal, like the big culminating event before the Crystal Castle is destroyed, is the moons of Thra or whatever line up, and it looks like an eyeball, like the all-seeing eye. And there was so much attention to detail that Brian Froud, like just with the creations of the characters and everything, he thought about geometry and sacred geometry. Like there's a whole book, I used to have it, and it was called The World of the Dark Crystal. And he explained his weird, like Gnostic, combining paganism and Celtic stuff. Him and some other guy came up with what the symbols of everything in the movie means. So like even the shapes of the characters, the colors they use, the symbolism on the walls. Like I remember seeing in one of the scenes, there's like Egyptian hieroglyphs of the Gelflings meeting the Skeksis and stuff like that, and it looks like Egyptian hieroglyphs, which makes sense because it was an image of the prophecy. Maybe I'll include the clip in there somewhere, but this, I don't know how long this video is going to be. But the Skeksis spoke in some kind of made-up version of Egyptian. I just think that's interesting. Consider what they do, and they do ritual sacrifices. And now we know that the pyramids in Egypt, they did sacrifice people in the pyramids of Egypt and all that stuff. And I don't think that Brian Froud is evil, baby blood drinker or whatever. I mean, he's the guy, his whole career is like painting fairies and elves, and I've seen him in interviews say that he knows, like, you don't understand, fairies and elves aren't cute, they're blights, they cause problems. Like historically, these are all, you know, the blights on mankind. And I would add to that that fairies and elves and all the stuff that Brian Froud was into, and the Goblins of Labyrinth and the World of Dark Crystal, that let's think of the Great Flood, when God flooded the earth, probably to try and get rid of fairies and elves and all these different type, the fae folk and all that stuff, and now they have to go behind the veil, like the Mists of Avalon and Marion Zimmer Bradley or whatever, if you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, it doesn't matter. And you know, the thing with Tolkien and the elves have to go again, like into the mists or whatever, and they have to like go away, and they're not like of this world, and they're timeless and ageless, and then they don't die and all that kind of thing. So that ties into I would say the realm of unclean spirits, and part of the reasons why God flooded the earth when fallen angels entered into human women and created a whole bunch of problems where the earth was so perilous that God flooded it to drown as much as he could. So anyway, back to the rest of the review. The Skeksis are literally doing ritual, let's just say human sacrifice, and harvesting the energy. And if you look at, I'm hoping I'll have clips of this in here, of like when they drain the vital essence. It's like they're making like adrenochrome stuff or whatever, where they're literally making a concoction that they drink that gives them youth. And there was talk about this in the early days of the Epstein files and all this frazzle drip and all these things. And I guess I'm getting into that, where they were harvesting stuff through terror, through trauma, that they would use to energy harvesting, or if adrenochrome's a real thing. I mean, Hunter S. Thompson wrote about it before anybody ever talked about it. And then here it is back again, where they take something of the adrenal glands, and then you drink that. And just the same thing with drinking blood, just the idea of drinking blood, which is forbidden in the Bible. It says don't drink blood. God sent King David in to wipe out the Amalekites, even their livestock. And if you look up what the name Amalekite means, it means the blood lickers. So this is vampirism. So the idea of vampires feeding off soulless beings that feed off the life essence of the living, or you could say unclean spirits feeding off the life essence of the living. There's laws in Leviticus about blood, the laws of bodily fluids or something like that, and there's all the stuff we're not allowed to do with blood. And he says, thou shalt not consume the blood of any living thing while its life blood runs through it. It means don't be a vampire and drink people's blood. It's pretty direct. And look at how in movies and popular culture the idea of these soulless beings who feed off the flesh of the living have been romanticized. The tragic character, it's like sympathy for the devil. What do you want to be after high school, Bella? Do you want to be a werewolf or a vampire? So Bella decides to sell her soul, and now she feeds off the blood of the living to continue. And that's the story of vampires. And that is, in this fantasy world of the world of Thra, that is a major point of the Dark Crystal, because in some of my other, research into this, I didn't see the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, but it's basically about the genociding of the Gelflings, and part of that genocide is that the Skeksis ritually sacrifice, sound familiar? The Skeksis ritually sacrifice the Gelflings to the point of genocide, till there's only two of them left, a boy and a girl, and the only reason they exist is because they were hidden. The Podlings, the Eastern European, the Croatians or whatever, hid the girl, and then and there's also a resurrection theme, which I didn't talk about in the rest of my review. So I'll talk about that now. And then the little boy Gelfling is taken by the Urskeks, which are, I would say, like the good Jews that aren't actually evil Kabbalists that do Talmud, baby blood drinking and all that shit. Because you know that there's people that maybe that are Jewish, and you know that they're not evil. And I agree with you. And there's a lot of good Jewish boys and girls in Israel that knew that they were going to be drafted into participating in a genocide, so they became conscientious objectors to the genociding of the Palestinians. And I saw clips of that, like news footage, and they were like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't participate in a genocide. And you're like, oh, this is, surely these young men and women are pleasing to God, even if they don't, give it up for Jesus as the Messiah. They still made the right decision to not to not be participants in a genocide. So what was the thing I wanted to go back to? I'll come back. I forget. Fucking gay!